Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mark Singh, and I work for the LiveGreen Toronto team, which is part of the City of Toronto's Environment and Energy Division. The vision of the Environment and Energy Division is to help make Toronto one of the greenest cities in North America. We're the creators and the champions of the city's Climate Action Plan, Transform TO, which is widely considered to be one of the most ambitious climate plans amongst the world's leading cities. Thank you so much for joining us for this, the 7th episode of our Live Green at Home workshop series. Really pleased to have you here. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement. I would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Just a couple of bits of housekeeping notes before we get started. Please note that we are recording this workshop. In case you miss anything, you'll be able to go back to our YouTube channel tomorrow for reference. And over the course of the session and during our speakers' presentations, if any questions come up whatsoever, feel free to enter them into the Q&A box, and we will address them at the end of the Q&A. So we're going to get right into it, and I'm really pleased to introduce my longtime colleague from Solid Waste Management Services, Michael Scalgin. Michael is the Manager of Policy and Planning at Solid Waste Management Services, and even before his time there, and during his 15 years working for the City of Toronto, he has always championed resident and community engagement in city building projects, helping to build a greener, stronger neighborhoods and communities. Michael's current role focuses on leading the planning and implementation of the city's long-term waste management strategy, aimed at helping the city achieve its goals for further waste reduction and moving towards a zero waste future. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Mark. Always good to be on a presentation with you. Thanks for hosting the session today and making time for me to talk a little bit to everybody on the webinar here, a bit about what the city is up to with respect to a single-use and takeaway item reduction strategy. Next slide. So one of the great things that we have happening right now, and as Mark mentioned, Live Green has been doing so much promotion for many, many years around not just reusables, but waste reduction, really all kinds of education and events. And it's really great for everyone to know that in our work at the city as well, in solid waste, we've been up to a lot of work the last few years, really trying to develop a whole series of policy recommendations for our elected officials to consider around how we can make more mandatory measures really to reduce the amount of single-use waste that's going on in the cities. So in addition to reusables, we're really looking at a whole suite of changes that I'll talk a little bit about as we open this session. But one thing that everyone should really know, if you haven't already aren't already aware of it, there is a big change coming, and there's a lot of talk, not just at the municipal level or provincial, but also at the federal level, of really a lot of policy changes coming in the very near future. If it wasn't for COVID, I bet you we would see a lot of those coming into play a lot sooner. We've been at a whole process at the city with a series of public consultations going on for the last 3 years to come up with a suite of recommendations of where we need to really prioritize of how we're going to reduce various single-use items that are going on in the takeout industry. Next slide. So here's a bit of a list of some of the proposed measures that we've been looking at the last few years. And I do want to let everybody know that as well, in a couple of months ago at City Council, we did have a staff report that was presented around stage 1 of a Suti reduction strategy, and Suti stands for single-use takeaway items. It's probably an acronym you're going to want to get to familiarize yourself with, because we're going to be coming out with a lot of communication items around this over the next year or so. And because of COVID, a lot of our plans slowed down last year. So we had a whole ambitious approach to come to council last May, and all of that was sort of thwarted by the current COVID-19 pandemic. And as many of you know, that put a whole other kind of perspective on single-use items out there if there was an upward trend around people moving away from single-use items, we definitely saw that trend going down, where people are more gravitating for concerns, whether there be fears or misperceptions or valid concerns around communicating any kind of COVID virus. So here's a bit of where we were looking at here. Some of the items that you should be aware of that we're looking at making sure there's a reduction of is some of the basic stuff that we see out there in the food establishments for takeout. We're looking, first of all, at plastic cutlery. That was a big one that we wanted to make sure are not automatically put into takeout bags. I can't tell you how many times I've received different cutlery when I didn't need it. I didn't ask for it. That's what we're looking to see how we can reduce it. Straws also comes up on that list. And this is really where we're pushing businesses to do an ask first, buy request. We're also looking at a whole piece here around shopping bags. And this is the single-use ones. We're looking at plastic, and we're also looking at paper. And the reason I want to bring that up as well is that, and I'll talk about this more in some other slides, is that for our approach here at the City of Toronto, we are not just looking at removing plastic items. We are looking to reduce waste in general. We use the term material agnostic. So we want to make sure that we are reducing any single-use items, whether they're paper, whether they're plastic, and even we are discouraging alternatives such as compostable replacements. So whether it's compostable cups or compostable cutlery, we at the city see this as a big drain on limited resources out there, and non-renewable and renewable resources, and really making sure that we are reducing all of those impacts. We're also looking at cups, whether they be disposable cups or paper or foam or plastic. And the big culprit that we're looking at as well that we consulted on was around removing this whole area around foam containers that are out there. Currently, they are accepted in our recycling program, but we want to see that the resource intensity that is required for creating the foam is removed, and that we get that whole item pretty much to become obsolete. This was our original plan that we had to present to council last year, and now we're reimagining this and seeing how we can come back with that next year. Next slide. So here's a little bit of a graphic that comes from the federal government, and this is a little bit to inspire everybody to know that, obviously, like many policy changes and legislation, if the feds put it in place, it makes it a lot easier for the provinces and municipalities to follow suit. And here's a great graphic to show that the feds are focusing on plastic. And so you got here plastic bags, stir sticks, six-pack rings, plastic cutlery, the foam containers here, and also plastic straws. Next container. Next slide, please. So what we put in place right now, because we're just waiting for all of these pieces to eventually have some kind of mandatory measures. We're looking at some in the very near future, talking next year, year after. There are going to be a whole series of mandatory measures that will more than likely be coming in place to ensure that these items are being reduced. In the meantime, we're going to be launching in October a voluntary measures program, and this is really geared specifically toward businesses to see how we can better equip them to get ready for the changes that are coming. We know it's going to change a lot of their operations. It's going to change how their staff work. And I know for many of you on the phone, if you're looking up at this from the perspective of bringing reusable items to food establishments, we know that more and more are accepting of reusable cups. But one of the biggest challenges is that a lot of food establishments still don't want to take reusable containers for the actual meal that you're having. And there's a lot of challenges that we have to work through on that. And so really what we're trying to do is help businesses to think more about what those challenges are and how we at the city can support them to be ready for those changes when they come. Next slide. So here's three main things. If you're going to take away anything from my presentation, I would say focus on this slide. These are the three things that we're doing to really help you when you're a customer going to a business that's going to make it easier for you to not have to accept single-use items and also to be able to use your reusable. So the first thing that we're doing is we're asking businesses, please put any of these particular single-use items, plastic cutlery, napkins, even the condiment packets, the straws, stir sticks, whether they're plastic or paper, put them behind the counter. We're actually even encouraging a number of the online apps for a lot of delivery services to include new selection buttons so that basically it'll require you, and I think a number of apps are already doing this, is that they're actually asking you, do you need ketchup? Do you need cutlery on the side? Do you need chopsticks? That's a really progressive move, and we're really supporting that. And that we want to make sure that's happening on a regular basis. The second one is that we are really pushing businesses to accept reusable cups and containers for takeout. And the last one, in addition to what I mentioned before about removing foam, so we're telling them, listen, get ready now because the city is considering a complete ban on foam containers in the near future. So we're telling them, if you're using foam containers, you better talk to your suppliers and see if there's an alternative that's acceptable in the city's recycling program. Or also the biggest one here, in addition to foam, we're also considering black plastic. So black plastic is also a big challenge out there for a whole bunch of other reasons we could talk about another episode perhaps. But definitely black plastic is another one that we're encouraging food establishments to outright stop using. Next slide. So here's some of the ways that we're going to help them to do that. So when we launch this program in October, we're really going to be getting out there, and we want to be able to provide resources for businesses to make those operational changes. So we want to give them the tips and best practices of businesses like Roncy Reduces, who's going to be following my opening remarks, and other businesses who are already making those changes. What are the best practices out there? What are the tips for any restaurant who has to make these changes? How can they do that? And even most importantly, how do we look at staff training? How do they get their staff to be more aware of how to accept reusables and also the containers for takeout? The second one that we're doing as well is we want to give the businesses the resources to communicate that to the customers. So we're looking at signage, we're looking at brochures, we're looking at other kinds of frequently asked questions that they may have from their customers, so they're best prepared to be able to deal with that demand from their customers. And of course, Toronto Public Health is involved in our strategy. One of the big concerns and sort of pushbacks that often comes from many employees or businesses in general is that there's this sort of fear and concern around accepting a reusable item for fear of contamination and then any kind of health risks that might come with it. So we've done our due diligence here, and we've talked to the right people at Toronto Public Health. We've got lots of information already available. Toronto Public Health does already encourage the sort of safety around accepting reusables and what those protocols might be. And last but not least, one of the great things that we're going to do is we're going to actually be showcasing on a weekly basis really some of the businesses out there that are doing a great job at taking up these measures voluntarily before they become mandatory. And we're going to be having weekly releases of different companies and food establishments who are doing all this wonderful work before it becomes mandatory. Next slide, please. And that's it.
Thank you, Michael. So as I mentioned at the top of the call, the top of the webinar, if you have any questions, all of our panelists will be around at the end of the webinar for the Q&A session. So feel free to enter your questions into the Q&A box, and we will get to them. So I'm really pleased to introduce to you two of our partners from Roncy Reduces. The first is Tina Soldovieri. Sorry, Tina. Tina grew up in Germany and moved to Toronto in 2002. While raising her three children, she realized that our environment is in dire need of support. She decided to change careers and completed a master's in environmental education, and now works at the Hyde Park Nature Center to help connect children and adults with nature. She's the founder of Roncy Reduces. If you've not heard of Roncy Reduces, I'm super glad that we're here to introduce them to you, and I really encourage you to look them up. A really wonderful organization. And that I was telling Tina before the call that us at LiveGreen Toronto really admire in terms of the work that they've done. It is a grassroots initiative in the Roncesvalles neighborhood that aims to engage local residents and businesses in jointly reducing single-use plastics and packaging waste. For Tina, waste reduction and nature are closely related topics. It is the lack of connectedness with nature that has created a culture in which we neglect how our actions impact nature. She believes that cultural change is possible, and if we all take responsibility for what we leave behind and learn to live with nature in mind. Reducing waste is one of the most tangible things we can do to transform our mindsets to one that engenders a more sustainable future. So welcome, Tina. We're really happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. Next up is Sonya Gammal, who has lived in the Roncesvalles neighborhood for over 20 years. Sonya is a mama, a local chef in Toronto, and an active member of the Roncy Reduces team. In 2005, Sonya apprenticed under Chef Jamie Kennedy and continues to practice and teach the slow food way. Dismayed with the excessive use of single-use plastic practices in the hospitality industry, one of Sonya's recent chef-inspired ventures called Roncy Pickup included a collaboration with Roncy Reduces team to evaluate the feasibility of offering a zero-waste deposit and return reusable container program. The venture has laid the foundation for Roncy Pickup to grow into slow green cuisine. In the making, the goal of slow green cuisine is to provide slow food prepared meals, pantry items, and cooking workshops using a green approach by offering zero waste packaging options and single-use practices to its Toronto West End neighbors and beyond. Sonya, it's great to have you. Over to you both to get started with the presentation.
This is wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen now. I think maybe Jessica, you have to give me permission. Jessica? Okay, if you could give me permission to share, then I could start the slideshow.
Sorry,
no
Sonya,
problem.
I'm just trying to give you the permission. It's just you're on the sort of
No
there
problem.
you go. I got it.
Oh, awesome.
Take it away.
Okay. Okay. Here. And I'm going to and almost there. Present. Sorry. There we are. Well, hello everyone. As you heard, my name is Tina Soldovieri, and Sonya Gammal and myself are here from Roncy Reduces. Thank you very much to Mark and Michael, Jedrick and Jessica and the City of Toronto for inviting us. It's really cool for us for this little neighborhood initiative. So Roncy Reduces is a neighborhood initiative in Roncesvalles, as you heard, and our goal is to reduce single-use plastics in our neighborhood by inspiring residents and local businesses to do it together. We all have heard, of course, about the tremendous problems plastic causes in our world, and I think it's never a bad time to talk about it again. Plastic simply does not go away. Its production is part of the climate crisis. It causes havoc for wildlife. It pollutes our drinking water. It actually has been declared a toxic substance recently. And as we all know now, most of it does not get recycled. It ends in our landfills and will survive us for hundreds of years. We simply don't have a solution for the amount of plastics that we are creating and throwing out every day. Also, single-use plastics that we use for food is almost always new, virgin plastic made from fossil fuels. And it's pretty simple. If all of us 7 billion people and growing use just a couple of single-use items every day, it's obvious that this will choke our planet. And we are not separate from our planet, from nature. We are part of it and need to take care of it. We need to connect ourselves with what we leave behind when we create all this plastic waste every day. That means we do need to phase out our single-use culture, especially, and build a culture of reuse and a circular way of thinking and doing things. Simply asking yourself, where does a thing go when I'm done with it? And that this has something to do with me. But is it really hard to avoid? The truth is, much of it is not hard to avoid at all. You simply need to pay attention to your choices. You need to plan a bit more. You need to remember to bring your bags and containers. It's basically about creating better habits. And of course, you need shops and restaurants that are open to it. And this is what we want to talk about today. Sonya?
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here with you all. So I think it's fair to say that most of us want to reduce the amount of single-use plastic we generate. But the idea of it sometimes is a lot easier than the practice of it. So how do we reduce the amount of single-use items that comes in and out of our homes? We need to start thinking about that other R word, reuse, reusable, and practice it with bringing our own reusable containers and our own reusable bags. Start with a step-by-step approach by replacing single-use containers with reusable BYO ones. So, replace all the off-the-roll polyplastic produce bags, plastic water bottles, and disposable coffee cups with reusable cloth, mesh, produce bags, reusable water bottles, and your BYO favorite travel mug or other reusable cup. And how about all those disposable takeout containers? Even the ones that claim to be compostable, but aren't even allowed in the green bin. Replace these with your own reusable containers. Likely, many of us have a Tupperware drawer with an assortment of reusable containers ready to be used as BYO containers. So instead of having your meat, your fish, or your cheese wrapped up in plastic, the next time you're at a deli, the fishmonger, or a cheese counter, ditch the single-use wrap and ask instead for bringing your own and using your own BYO container. Fabric, whether cotton or mesh bags for bulk and bread items, are a great reusable alternative to plastic bags. And more, we are also seeing some shops offer dispensable soaps, detergents, shampoos. Hey, they even have kombucha and nut milk being dispensed. So replace those disposable plastic containers with refill your own BYO container or bottle. And one that we are probably most familiar with is replacing the plastic grocery bag with the reusable BYO cloth bag or basket. All those BYO practices may necessitate a behavioral change for us. So back in 2019, Roncy Reduces started asking businesses along Roncesvalles Street to participate and display the Roncy Reduces BYO sticker in hopes to make the bridge between ideas to actually practicing BYO behavior a reality, and one where it is more comfortable for all. So with the sticker, consumers will now know and feel more comfortable that they can bring their own BYO bags and containers when they walk into shops that display the BYO sticker. The idea of it was to engage with business owners about reducing single-use plastic and lowering the barrier for BYO practices. This way, the hesitation for people to engage in BYO practices, it will be minimized. And for businesses, it feels good for them to participate in environmental stewardship. It also saves the money on packaging, while at the same time, these businesses allowing their customers to bring their own reusable containers helps to save our planet one less single-use container at a time. So today we are also specifically talking about single-use plastics and packaging waste in relation to takeout food. A personal example of a change behavior and one that aligns with the Roncy Reduces initiative of ditching disposable for reusables is when my family orders takeout from some of the local restaurants along Roncesvalles. We love, sushi, Thai for takeout and order it with our BYO reusables. At first, it was a mind and behavioral shift But now my husband and my 2 teenage boys will call ahead and drop off the containers when ordering. So certainly, and like absolutely, there are some helpful strategies when adopting a BYO approach when ordering takeout. You know, ask first before ordering food items. Ask if they accept BYO and fill your own reusable containers. Asking can often be the hardest part, but once you get used to it, it's not hard anymore. Sometimes different staff at the same restaurant react differently. That's why asking every time makes the process smoother. Also, drop off containers when ordering. Be prepared that this is an extra step and your important contribution to stopping takeout plastic waste. Bring a good number of clean containers in a large, clean, reusable bag. Extras and different options can be helpful. For example, ordering 5 different items, let's say from an Indian restaurant, bring 6 containers, maybe even a cooler bag. Sushi and sandwich places are usually an easy place to start. And say no to all those extra little single-use items. No to plastic bags, no to plastic cutlery, no to all those extra, condiments, no to napkins. And if it's a salad, you can ask, please put the dressing on top, or you can remember to bring a small container for the extra dressing or sauce. Another, helpful strategy is to resist cardstock. A lot of cardstock containers look nice, but are actually, coated with plastic or do not break down in the green bin system. Plus, paper comes from trees, and trees are important for our climate and should not be used for disposables. And if staff seem hesitant, ask them to put your food on a reusable plate and pack it yourself. At the Goods, a cafe on Roncesvalles, they keep a tray for BYO containers. So BYO personal containers never touch their counter when filling them. And another helpful strategy is to make it fun. Make it, perhaps a family tradition, depending on your takeout habit, whether it's once a week or once a month. See how many waste-free takeout containers you can do, and marvel at the fact that you leave nothing behind. So the bottom line, yes, it's a new way of doing takeout, and takeout businesses they rely on single-use plastics, so we can help them overcome it. Remember to ask first, bring a bag, and bring lots of suitable clean containers.
I want to jump in here and talk a little bit about health. I know Michael has already mentioned it, but to make matters worse, during the pandemic, it has led to a huge increase in plastic waste. The use of single-use plastic has gone up 250 to 300% according to the International Solid Waste Association. And not only because of PPE and the increase in takeout food, but also because we fear that reusing things could transmit the virus. But scientists and health experts, including the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, CAPE, I have a quote up here in my slideshow. They released official statements about the safety of reusables during COVID-19 and that surface transmission is not a problem. Reusing and BYO is actually safe, and Toronto Public Health allows it. But looking at it from a health perspective is actually a really great and useful way of understanding the plastic problem. Yes, healthcare still requires a lot of disposable items. However, in the grand scheme of things, it is much healthier for ourselves and for the planet if we give up single-use items in our everyday lives outside the medical field. There are more and more studies about microscopic plastic particles entering our bodies through water, fish, and plastic packaged food. So really, we need to stop prioritizing human health over environmental health because ultimately it will affect human health one way or the other if we don't care about planet health. And no matter what the pandemic will be doing, single-use plastics remain a tremendous threat to the planet, and it will stay that way until we resolve it. So we can't really close our eyes for that. The health conversation is, as we talked about before, also important for businesses. They want to make sure they follow all health rules. So it's fantastic that the City of Toronto reaches out to residents and businesses to encourage the reduction of single-use takeaway items. If many people ask for it, if there's a demand to do BYO, restaurants and coffee shops will pay attention. This has definitely been the experience in Roncesvalles. While it was a slower process at the beginning in 2019 to get businesses on board, after a few months, a lot of businesses were ready to join us. Plus, and this now refers to the slide you can see, disposable takeout containers and bags are a significant expense. According to this Toronto Star article from March, businesses spend $2,000 to $3,000 on containers every month, of course, depending on the size of the business. And those are containers that never come back. Reusable containers can bring down these costs and the costs for the environment, of course. Sonya?
So let's chat about Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
So let's chat about Roncy Reduces successes. I'll give you some numbers. 70 plus businesses participated by displaying a Roncy Reduces BYO sticker on their front door. We also have an updated list, which is posted on our Roncy Reduces Facebook page. And we did see a drop in participating businesses during COVID, fearing reusables during the pandemic. However, we are seeing the rise again with the information being dispelled that reusables are in fact safe to use as long as cleaning practices are upheld, even during a pandemic. So the businesses participating with us range from restaurants and cafes to market, produce, grocery, and bulk food shops along Roncesvalles. And this BYO Reduces initiative has also spread to 19 neighborhoods in Toronto and to 6 towns and cities in Ontario. And you see on the slide all the different neighborhoods with their different sticker who have participated and are participating. This spring, we were also contacted by people in Vancouver's neighborhood, East Van, and this week we sent a Palo Alto Reduces sticker to an emerging group in Palo Alto, California.
So we've been around since 2019, but this year we finally created a website for all existing and emerging groups, and for anyone who's interested in plastic waste reduction, or for businesses who want to see what's actually involved. If you want to start a Reduces group in your neighborhood, or if you want to join an existing one, you can find information and tools for starting a group on our website. It's www.canadareduces.ca, and definitely email us so we can spread the news and include you on the new website and in our network. And of course, you don't have to start a group in order to use reusable containers in your neighborhood. You can just start by bringing your own containers to your next takeout adventure. And just remember to ask first and drop off your container when you order.
So are there other ways to reduce single-use practices other than BYO? And the answer is yes. It's with a slow but growing number of reuse and return systems, either existing in place or certainly on the rise. So apart from BYO, bringing your own containers, there are also other ways to cut out single-use plastic and packaging. Certainly starting with the good old deposit and return when purchasing milk, yogurt, and beer, and building on that idea of reusables to end the plastic crisis, there are now app-based return and reuse ventures. Two businesses that use an app-based model include Inuit, which is deemed to start this year with an app-based reusable takeout container program. And another one that is up and running is Muse Cup, an app-based system for reusable coffee cups, where you get the app and a Muse Cup at partnering locations. You bring the cup back at participating cafes, and then you fill up on your next coffee using a reusable Muse Cup. Muse in Toronto is run by Dream Zero, a business that rents and sells large amounts of reusable cups, dishes, and containers to events, restaurants, and other businesses. Supply is another reusable return service, a little different in that it is not app-based, but where participating restaurants and users simply set up an account to tap into Supply's reuse and drop-off container system. Supply currently has 21 partner restaurants in East Toronto, 22 drop-off locations, and has impressively saved over 6,800 single-use takeout containers from landfills during the past 9 months. And another deposit and return system at the neighborhood level in Toronto's West End and Roncesvalles neighborhood is a small monthly takeout dinner service that offers a built-in deposit return container option at the time of ordering. And where on average, 70% of their clientele opt in to use reusable rather than disposable. And the return rate of containers it's not quite 100%, but varies between 85 to 90%. And often a reminder to return the containers to keep it circular does help. It's exciting to see that customers are ready to make a change when given the option to choose between disposable versus reusables. And a quote from a Roncy pickup customer expressing not only how much they love their aromatic, full of flavor tagine dinner, but a testimonial that shouts out to their zero waste takeout experience. As Joanne and her husband say, kudos as well for the brilliant container system. We have succumbed to ordering takeout several times during the pandemic, but this was by far the most completely trash-free, stress-free, well-considered system we have seen.
So maybe we are almost at the end of our little presentation. Maybe one more word to entice you. Try not to think about switching to reusables as an extra step. Think about it as a natural step. We have skipped that last step of caring about our waste for too long. The natural step is to reuse a container instead of immediately making it a waste item. And it won't be a burden if we do it together. The city, the people, the coffee shops and restaurants, whether we BYO, bring our own bags and containers, or whether we support takeout businesses that offer reuse and return systems. And starting it now prepares us to phase out single-use plastics altogether by actually, as we just heard from Michael, banning the production of items that don't fit into a circular economy and are harmful for everyone. Albatrosses, sea turtles, humans, and many other species. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you both so much. That was awesome. Lots of great information, lots of helpful tips. Just a quick anecdote. Before we were all sent home last March, my team and I work in Metro Hall. There's a cafeteria on the ground floor. And for Plastic Free July, which I forgot to mention at the top of the webinar, it's Plastic Free July. So happy Plastic Free July, everybody. We went to the cafeteria owner or manager and just asked, can we use reusable containers? And they said, sure. And did you know we take 25 cents off your bill if you bring your own container? So my little team started doing that, and the word just spread in the building. And eventually, at lunchtime, at the lineup for the cafeteria, you'd see maybe sometimes anywhere between 25 to 50% of the people carrying their own containers. So it spreads. It's as Sonya mentioned, it might seem intimidating to ask. You never know, right? The worst you can get is a no, and you start to build momentum. It's really exciting, and it's fun, and it's really good for the environment. So thank you both. Really appreciate the information that you've shared with us. Let's get to some Q&A. So just a reminder, if you have any questions for any of our panelists, including Michael, please feel free to send them into the use the Q&A box. So I'm wondering, given that Toronto by nature and nurture is a culturally diverse, has culturally diverse groups of people or communities with culturally set or learned behaviors, does banning work versus attaching cost to them? So, you know, rather than banning an item, maybe adding a cost to it, like with the plastic bags these days, and would education provide better outcomes? So maybe I'll open this to Michael first, and then if Sonya or Tina have thoughts, we can take those at that point. Michael?
Sorry, I missed that piece. Mark, can you repeat that?
Sure. So the question is, I think the fundamental question here is, what do you think is the benefit of banning versus incentivize or disincentivizing by attaching a cost to a Suti? And would education perhaps provide better outcomes than banning?
Yeah, that's always a interesting, important question. I think that definitely banning has a lot of complications where you know, businesses can take a long time to adapt to that and to incorporate that into their business operations. I think for us as an approach here, I think that we're really looking at the banning most importantly because of the critical situation that we're in. We did hear some of the information there from Roncy Reduces around the critical state that we're in with the environment. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more of these items being listed as potential bans, really to help accelerate us to meet the goals that we're looking for, whether they're for zero waste or even bigger climate change issues. A lot of this really ends up relating a lot to GHG emissions and making sure that we can reduce what is coming out of the waste industry and contributing to a lot of the factors of climate change. And we know when we're looking at that clock, a lot of that is moving quite quickly and we're running out of time. Many people feel we're already past that tipping point. And so I think we're looking at definitely for foam containers, seeing that this is creating a lot of issues for us environmentally, and that we've sort of missed any point of perhaps more slower measures that can see a change to this, but really bringing in something a bit more aggressive and looking at a ban.
Thank you. Tina or Sonya, would either of you like to add some comments to that?
Sure, I would love to jump in. I think one important reason why a ban can help is it also sends not only a signal to the businesses, that the restaurants and the people who use them, but it sends a signal to the producers. And if things keep being produced, they find their markets. So what's really needed is a change of culture, not just like we as people of Toronto behave, but how engineers are making things. That sounds pretty big, but I think that's where we have to get going, that we have to go towards, if there's a product designed, it has to have a final solution. It has to go somewhere circular. And like the styrofoam container, if there is no way to do anything with it, just goes to the landfill and pollutes our lands ultimately, then it's actually helpful to ban things. And I think the city strategy is amazing in that way, that we start with this voluntary educational approach, because you don't want to jump on people and say, you're not allowed to do this. But that's why I love about it that there's a training phase, right? But we don't have, as Michael says, we don't have much time for a training phase.
Piece I'll jump in there to add from what Tina mentioned as well is that, and for the question that came from the participant, I think one of the other pieces as well, and you'll find this for many items that we're looking to have sort of these mandatory restrictions, when we come up with a ban or if that ban gets approved next year, of course, we're going to be looking at a period of time for what we call soft enforcement. And I think that's a really important piece for me to mention. And that's really the whole education component. We know our society, especially as Canadians, we're nothing more than accommodating, and that even when we come up with a ban, we are going to be coming out with, we are going to be having officers, bylaw officers out there in food establishments issuing violations the next day. We're, as many of our bylaws when they come in, we'll be looking at least a 1 year soft enforcement education phase. We're looking at all kinds of opportunities to get the supports out there for the businesses. So similar to the voluntary measures program that I mentioned earlier, we will continue to be providing all of that kind of support to help the businesses transition. And then further to Tina's point, the suppliers are already seeing the writing on the wall, and they're seeing that they're more than likely going to have to start to stock inventory of other alternatives other than foam containers. And that's really moving us all toward that change of culture around waste reduction.
That's a really good segue for the next question, Michael. Thank you. And it's about where does anybody know where one can find good reusable containers in the same size as restaurant takeout containers?
Yeah, there is. I don't have the name of the supplier, and I probably wouldn't want to promote one company over another. But we have definitely done our research at the city, and there is a growing sort of inventory of items you can buy that actually, you can actually find, the same way we have these foam containers. I mean, the most popular ones that you find a lot of takeout are the ones that have the different compartments for the rice and the noodles and the meat and the veggies. And you can actually find durable containers that are shaped exactly like those reusables. And if you should search online, and I'm sure we can provide some lists on our web pages of suppliers of these types of containers. And the reason I like to mention that as well is that, even for many of us who bring durable containers for takeout, often what happens when I go to many takeout places is I ask them to put the food in the container, and they'll grab one of their foam containers because they have to do portion control. They have to make sure they're not giving you more noodles for the next customer or less. I guess the fear is you're going to get less. So they'll use their foam container as a measuring, and then they'll just throw it in the garbage, and then they give me back my container. Well, we don't want that happening. So we're actually encouraging that on businesses' side, is that we're saying, why not have basically a reusable, durable size measurer that you can use and then dump it into a container. So all of these are really, it's just about changing the way that we're doing our operations. And I can tell you, I have a lot of confidence. I think that we're going to find a lot of food establishments, if we give them the right resources and connect them with the right tools, they'll make the change because it makes the most sense. And as Tina, I think, mentioned as well, it definitely saves them money, right? That they don't have to buy. And we're putting together a bit of a calculator for a lot of those businesses so that they can see how much they're spending on disposable forks and condiment packets and so forth, and how they can change that going forward.
Tina, Sonya?
Well, we mentioned Dream Zero is one of them who I think mainly provides for businesses, but anyone can order from them containers that are in the same shape as a takeout container. But yeah, as Michael said, there's a lot out there if you start looking. And I mean, look at India and the tiffin container, which is quite an investment, but they last forever and they travel through the cities and they always work, right? And there's already quite a number of places in Toronto where you can get tiffin containers. You look for zero waste stores, and often they have a section with containers too.
Mm-hmm. And to be very honest with you, sometimes just, your standard container works and they just you know, they do their best to eyeball the serving that they're giving.
That's
you.
right. That's
I'm
true.
always worried I get less than the other people. Just to make that very clear.
Yeah.
And to
There's
start
a
with,
comment.
sorry to
No, please
interrupt.
go ahead, Tina. Go ahead.
To
Go ahead.
start with, you can always, if you want to just start it, use your last black plastic container, right? If you want to just get started, try this, and then you will eventually find the permanent option, right?
Mm-hmm. There's a comment here that the participant would also like to see the city focus on food plastic wrap, plastic bags, and aluminum foil that food service places use to prepare and store food. Michael, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, when we started our consultation 3 years ago, our first phase of consultation for this strategy was asking the general public, what are the items that we need to prioritize here? And I can tell you, we had a list of almost 100 items, and the packaging, especially the aluminum foil and the plastic packaging, it is a big issue, and it's definitely one that we're continuing to do research on. I think that the reason we haven't included it so far is that we're seeing this as sort of the first step in a longer journey, if you will. But we are part of actually a national conversation of this because we really need to have some unique approaches to it. I think that we need to see where the aluminum foil, the plastic packaging, and all of that can come into play. But it's definitely something that we are continuing to do more research on. And we'll probably have more to say on that in a couple of years. But right now, this is sort of where we're landing the reduction strategy so far.
Phasing it in, you know, a little bit at a time, because I mean, I think we can all appreciate that the impact of COVID-19 on the hospitality industry has just been immense.
Of course, yeah.
And you know, we have to also consider the burden that we're placing on these small business owners. Right? These people are the lifeblood of our economy, so we have to be careful about how we approach these things. Here's another question, a question from Karen. Is there any law or recommendation from the city not to use reusables in restaurants or butcheries? I'm trying to figure out what to say when they won't accept my reusables. Who'd like to take that one?
Well, I could start with that one. I think that, you know, when we talk about so first off, I think that one of the pieces that we're looking at is that any establishment has within their rights to refuse a reusable container. I think that's one of the challenges that you're speaking about. And from the perspective of the city, we do sort of provide from public health information to let business owners know that there are very few risks of accepting these containers. So there isn't any kind of rule that says that they can't accept it. But one of the things that would be really helpful on that front is that we find a few municipalities in the States, Seattle and Berkeley, actually have come out to make it mandatory that food establishments must accept reusables. Now, we're kind of on the other end. We don't say you have to accept it. We just say you're allowed to accept it. So it's a bit of, yeah, so I think that's the main sort of splitting of hairs there. But I think that there's no necessarily any law that says that the establishment has to take it, nor do they say that they don't have to take it.
Tina or Sonya, from your perspective and experience with maybe like the question of butcheries, for example, butchers, you know, those kinds of shops are very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it goes quite to the core of why we started Roncy Reduces, is that we were just a bunch of neighbors, and we all felt that this is the issue for us, that we want to reduce our waste, and then we go there and if you are on your own and you have to communicate that, it's hard, right? You're standing in a line, you're talking about plastic waste, and people think this is not the time, the place, just get your order done. And that's why we started it. And that's what actually has helped, even for myself. I live in that area a lot, that I know these butchers, they took the sticker, right? They put it on their window. So that's their commitment. And if I go there, and even if there's someone who says, or is not sure, and I think, yeah, but you joined the initiative, and it's mostly not necessary because they're aware, and that's why they joined us. And that was really the reason, because sometimes it is true, it is hard if you go in and what can you say. The other piece I wanted to tell that person is, Karen, I think, that you can go to the Canada Reduces website, and there's a health section, and there all the information listed from the statement from the City of Toronto and from others about the safety of reusable. So if you want to prep yourself and say, okay, actually it's safe, they can still say no, but this is often the reason that it's been denied, right?
Thank you so much. So we are running out of time. We do have two questions that I want to get to, so I'm going to ask short responses. Michael, why does the city tell us that we can put styrofoam containers in the blue bin when they in fact end up in the landfill? Yeah, Michael.
Now the foam containers, I don't have all the data in front of me right now, but we do encourage this. I'll have to get back to you on that question. I'm not avoiding the question. I just want to make sure you have the right answer, but I don't have that off in my notes right now to provide to you. So I can definitely answer that in a response back to all of the participants with the slideshow presentations.
What I do know is that often the ability for something to be recycled is based on the ability for the city to find a buyer, and foam is a difficult item to find buyers for.
That's correct. And also the other part of the problem too that I know of as well is that because there's food that can be contaminating the foam as well, that also is a big challenge for us, the city. And we have a lot of campaigns that we have done around issues of contamination in the blue bin. And unfortunately, the foam containers often are the ones that are the biggest culprits because they often contain food in there. People aren't dumping out the food, so they can sometimes put the foam container in the blue bin with some food. That causes a whole bunch of problems with the rest of the recyclables and finding a market for it.
Thank you. And when is the city going to run a PSA campaign to show that it supports BYO habits at restaurants? Michael.
Yeah, see that. Eh? So I think that's a great idea. I mean, I could bring that back to our team, and we could look at what more. We have we do have a very good campaign around a whole bunch of waste reduction. I think we won a number of awards. I think the city has done quite a bit of stuff, and we are currently doing a lot of campaigns on a whole bunch of fronts. But I think supporting those establishments and really letting people know who's doing the BYO is a great idea. And to be honest, that really ties in with our recognition program that's coming up in the fall. And I really love the idea because our team can take that. I can take that back to our team to look at how we can maybe focus on the BYO establishments for our recognition program and showcasing them on our website.
Thank you so much. So we have to wrap. Get your pencils out because I'm going to give you a whole bunch of URLs. I'm kidding. They were posted into the chat box. So if you,
Great.
And they will be sent out. They're going to be sent out with the resource package after. So if you are interested, the city just released its revamped and awesome and shiny new LiveGreen Perks program. It's an app, a free app that's available on your favorite app store, and it is basically a green business directory where many of the businesses that are part of the various Reduces programs across the city are listed. Not all of them. It's not a complete list, but feel free to check that out. Again, it's a free app, connects you to your favorite green businesses and services in the city with over almost 500 businesses on the listing. Also, for more information on the city's solid waste strategy and all the great stuff that Michael was talking about through the last hour, please visit toronto.ca//single-use, single-use. Again, it's in the chat box. And then for more ways on how to go green at home, at school, or in your business, please visit us at LiveGreen Toronto, livegreentoronto.ca. There's a ton of information and resources on there. I'd like to thank the city staff who have curated this webinar and the 6 webinars before today, Jessica and Adam. Thank you so much. Thank you to our speakers. And thank you for tuning into this workshop. I hope it has provided you with a lot of information some food for thought, no pun intended, okay, pun fully intended.
Yeah.
And just and just a little bit of inspiration to reduce your waste and increase your connection to nature. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
It was
Bye, guys.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Bye.
That's a great job, Mark.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
everybody. Thank you.